buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is in order of importance the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Dukes Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
It's my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, it's for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a 2A nature right here on the Michael Dukes Show. Good morning, my friends. Welcome to the program. It is another beautiful day in paradise here on top of the world in beautiful Homer, Alaska, as we broadcast to everyone, everywhere, all the time, both here on the internet and, of course, also across the great state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello to all my friends in the interior and across the rest of the state. You ready to go? It's our favorite day of the week. Right. Today we get a chance to talk about the issue that we care about, the Second Amendment, and so much more. We got a great guest set up for today. Codrea is waiting. He's going to be talking with us about all kinds of stuff, including an analysis from him on the president's first 100 days in office from a pro-gun perspective and more. Then we're going to take some calls and talk about some other headlines here in hour 2. Willie Waffle is unfortunately suffering food poisoning, so he will not be joining us. He sent me a text last night and is like, oof, I've fallen and I can't get up. So it'll be a second week in a row without Willie. We're gonna have to do an extra long segment with him next week just to get caught up on all the good entertainment news and movies and everything else. So that's we're gonna figure something out here for hour 2 today. But without further ado, let's get in and start talking with our friend, the one, the only, the author on Guns blog, and of course writer for many different great stories related to the Second Amendment and other gun rights issues. It's David Codrea, who joins us right now live from a secret undisclosed location in his living room. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Michael, always a pleasure to be on your program.
Can you hear me, Dave?
Very well, thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on, my friend. It's good to see you. It's been a hot minute, and I'm glad to sit down with you and talk and get the rundown from you on what your thoughts are. I know you've been writing about this over. You've been writing about, where's the president going with this? I think you, like I, were cautiously optimistic, especially in light of the president's first term, where, of course, as we pointed out several times, he took a big bite out of the Second Amendment with the whole bump stock ban, with his commentary after Parkland about, red flag laws, and we'll just take the guns and worry about due process later. That was a big blemish. And so in his second go around, I was worried. I know you were worried based on your writings, but I became more cautiously optimistic as it looked like he was going to win. And there's been some good signs, but why don't you give me your hot take here on the first 100 days and, pros and cons? Where did he do good? Where did he do bad? And what's your overall thoughts on the situation right now?
My overall thoughts is, I guess the word that comes to mind is bipolar, because we see ups and we see downs, and we don't know what we're going to see today and what we're going to see tomorrow, and whether we're all going to be going, yeah, right on, and cheer it, or whether we're going to be slapping our foreheads going, again. We've seen some positive steps in terms of changes in ATF leadership, getting rid of some of the bad apples and bringing in some people who are promised are going to be good apples. Although how you can run ATF and do it constitutionally is a conundrum that I'm not smart enough to figure out how to do. We've seen Pam Bondi, who has been problematic on the Second Amendment as Attorney General, come out and say that she is creating a Second Amendment task force. And again, people going right on for that. I have some thoughts on what's missing from that. We see some legal cases where the Justice Department, despite Pam Bondi's Second Amendment task force and promising how the Second Amendment is now going to be protected by the Justice Department, which many of us have been calling for decades. Okay, what's the point of the Justice Department if not to enforce rights? But let me see how's the best way to put this. We see them siding with like Letitia James in New York, attacking gun manufacturers who make parts kits. And then all of a sudden they retract. They say, no, we didn't mean that. We have another case that just come out. I just wrote it up for Firearms News. It should be coming out shortly, where the Trump administration and Pam Bondi has sided against the legality of machine guns, actually arguing that machine guns are not protected by the Second Amendment, which, if the militia does not have the right to common use weapons, ordinary military equipment, which is what the militia is supposed to be about, then you really have no Second Amendment. So I see ups and I see downs. And the other thing about this Second Amendment task force touches on something that I've been trying to get people to notice for a long time. I feel a little bit like I'm screaming at passing cars, get my Windex bottle out and my little rag to do your windshield here. But we need to have the equivalent. Joe Biden put in this Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and Kamala Harris was the chair of this. We need to have a counterpart in the Trump administration, which I envision calling the Office of Second Amendment Protection. And you need to have equal gravitas, whether it's J.D. Vance or whether it's someone else that's chairing this thing. But what this would have, and what you don't see in the Second Amendment Task Force, is you don't see gun owner representation there. You don't see leaders of the gun rights groups in there. You don't see leading Second Amendment attorneys in there and gun rights advocates, so that we can keep the Trump administration from making these embarrassing mistakes, because it's almost like they don't really understand what the issue is about when they come out with some of these insane legal stances. And we could forestall that and keep that from happening and keep the surprises from happening if you had adequate gun owner representation advising them and counseling them and looking at the lawsuits and looking at the bills that are coming across and looking at what the states are doing and being able to advise them on what the priorities are and what a Second Amendment consistent position taken by the administration would be before they announce it and everybody slaps their foreheads and go, what are you guys doing again? Okay.
Well, it's like one word. It's like one word we kept hearing. Obama used it and Biden used it and others have used it, stakeholders, right? Oh, we've got to have all the stakeholders here in this. And of course, when they talked about stakeholders and gun control, what they meant was having gun control organization people on the panels and on the committees and on the groups and everything else. I don't see a whole lot of folks from FPC or GOA or even NRA being part of this Second Amendment Task Force or the Second Amendment Protection Unit or anything else. Where are the stakeholders representing the citizenry?
Yeah, well, first of all, when I hear the word stakeholder, I picture Peter Cushing holding one with a mallet over his head and pounding into the coffin. But you're absolutely right, and this is my concern, because everyone on this Second Amendment Task Force, including the whether or not they're going to be involved, the new Solicitor General, John Sauer, the new Civil Justice Department Civil Rights honcho at Harmeet Dillon, is that her name? everybody feeds from the same hand. Okay, there's nobody who's actually independent. Everybody on that task force is a member of the government and is a member of the administration, and that's where their primary loyalties are going to have to be. That's where their career-minded decision-making and statements are going to be coming from. You don't have any independent voices that can say, wait a minute, I disagree with this. That won't be a career killer. That won't get them booted off. And
Right.
That's not the kind of transparency that we need. We don't need these people telling us what our rights are. We need to be able to sit down with these people and show them where they are screwing up and going off the rails. And it would actually work in their favor if they would just listen to it and understand that, there are some subject matter experts that you can rely on for help. Let us help you. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Because otherwise you're just going to be telling us what you think. And we're going to be saying, well, hold on a second. You're not considering this, that, and the other implications that result in infringements. That's not what this is supposed to be about.
Yeah, no. And I think as we look at this, there has been some good things. I mean, last night or early this morning, it was noted that the the Department of Justice has now filed amicus briefs in a challenge to Hawaii law that makes all the all private property gun free unless the owner specifies. I mean, there's some good things. There are some good things coming out, but overall, it's I would say it's not enough, right? I mean, David, I think we can highlight some of the good things, but it's the things where they're slipping through, like some missed opportunities, like you're saying with this task force. Where are the people who are subject matter experts on the other side? We keep going back to the same pool and pulling the same pool of people into this, who are some of the these are some of the people that created the problem. You think they're going to change now just because there's a bellwether change in the room? I mean, we need some fresh voices in there, especially people who are on the other side of the issue,
and people that we as gun owners can exert our own influence over. Because if we're a member of GOA or a member of SAF or a member of NRA, and we now have the ability to contact these people as our representatives and make our priorities known to them and to hold them accountable if they're not doing it. And these are folks who would be very, very sensitive to being criticized for not being pro-gun enough. So you need to have this kind of representation. You need to have scholars. You need to have scientists, people like John Lott, okay, ought to be a voice that is heeded in terms of, when you're going to be coming up with just policies that are supposed to address crime, policies that are supposed to address what this disarmament law is going to do. And without that, and of course, another suggestion that I've seen coming from, I believe it's the Firearms Policy Coalition, okay? It's kind of similar to my Office of Second Amendment Protection, except it's not really. They say that we need a Second Amendment czar. And I resist the word czar. It's like, we wouldn't say we need a Second Amendment Führer. A czar is a tyrant and a dictator just by nature. And again, unless this person, or what I'm saying is if this person still works for the administration, again, he's feeding from the same hand. And that is problematic for us. So the other thing that I'm seeing is that our own arguments advanced by some of our people, and this is where we need to control or make known or influence what some of our people are saying, because again, in this machine gun case that I talked about earlier, they're using our own arguments against us. They're saying, well, you can't have machine guns because they're not in common use. Well, why aren't they in common use? They're in common use because you guys have, banned everything post 1986. And this is where that common use argument can come and bite us, because they can say it's not in common use. Well, it's not in common use because of why? Because you're infringing, because you are essentially assigning yourself an authority that is nowhere legitimately delegated to you within the Constitution, but you're using this to keep a disarmament edict in place. And of course, the other thing that this does is look at the tremendous advancements in firearms that have happened since the founding era. okay, and up until the modern day. And it's foolish to think that firearms and weapons and arms development technology will not continue to advance, including advancing exponentially. Well, if they're not in common use, then they can forever be denied to we the people. And the other thing is they limit all of their Second Amendment arguments, our side does, to self-defense. Well, you know, if you say self-defense, then some judge can come by and say, well, yeah, but you don't need this magazine for self-defense. In most cases, you know, you can get by with just whatever. And they use this to justify banning classifications of firearms. And that's because our side, for one reason or another, figures arguing the militia, which is the preamble to the Second Amendment, recognized by the founder, codified in United States Code, okay, and nobody wants to touch it because it doesn't serve anyone's interest to talk about revitalizing the militia. But that militia argument, the ultimate last resort against tyranny, the most egalitarian power sharing arrangement ever devised by man, they all want to ignore it, including our side in their legal arguments. So if we limit ourselves to self-defense, then what's in common use for self-defense greatly limits what we can have now and absolutely puts a brick wall in front of what we can have in the future.
David Codrea is our guest. You could find his daily writings at waronguns.com. He also writes for Firearms News and Guns Magazines and so many more. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back. We're continuing some discussions on the president's first 100 days, the pros and the cons, and where do we go from here? What if David was king for a day and he was the czar, right? He was the czar. What would he do? We'll have these continuing discussions in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
David Codrea continues with us here in the commercial break. You know, I hadn't thought about that use of the potential abuse of the phrase common use, because you're right. I mean, what if some mystical, magical new technology develops around guns or firearms? I mean, hell, somebody develops a laser rifle, I don't know, rail gun, something like that. And somebody says, well, that's not in common use, so now we're going to ban it all, you know? If they were able to get a Gauss rifle working, what, you know, well, there's only 3 of them, so they're not in common use. Now we got to ban them. It's a good point. I mean, the whole point of the Second Amendment was just basically hands off, no discussion. And we keep forgetting about this argument about guns and machine guns rather, you just used is the prime example, because again, prior to 86, there was a plethora, and there were more machine guns going into circulation all the time because they were allowed to be manufactured. And as long as you paid your tax, you were still able to go ahead and get one. After that, they've created an artificial limit. They're the ones that are fixing the supply and demand on this thing.
Yeah, as are many of the collectors. You know, many of the collectors don't want to see the Hughes Amendment go away because they have firearms that are worth $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 that if all of a sudden the market were opened up and we could have whatever it was we wanted to, the prices would drop dramatically, and the value of their collections would go down dramatically. So what are you going to do? It's, you know, we are self-limiting sometimes in terms of what we allow our gun groups to get away with in terms of their arguments without challenging them. We just kind of trust that this is all going to happen and that they're doing the best we can, but it's not. When you give the other side arguments that allows them to work around infringements on you. You're not doing yourself and you're not doing your constituents any favors. And of course, you could get kind of conspiratorial about this and think, well, if there was no gun control, then what would these gun groups that are raking in millions of dollars be about? Or how much are they dependent on the citizen disarmament train, to keep their doors open and their lights on?
Right, because they've created an industry, right? I mean, they've created an industry of activism, and that's not just a 2A issue. That's an issue with many different things, environmentalism and everything else, where they've created the gravy train of 6 and 7 figure salaries and bonuses and everything. I mean, look at the BLM movement, where they were raking in millions of dollars and they bought houses and cars and luxury stuff and everything else. It's become an industry. They don't want to see it go away simply because it's their livelihood.
It's not that far-fetched when you take a look at how vulnerable NRA was to Letitia James just ripping them a new one, and forcing all kinds of disclosures and changes within the organization. And of course, with Wayne LaPierre being deposed, and now we're looking at an organization, and we're still looking at an unmanageable boondoggle when you're talking about 76 directors, for goodness sakes.
Right.
But we see that I'm not just pulling, conspiracy theory out of thin air. We've seen it happen in real life, in real time, very recently. We're still recovering from it. And whether or not NRA recovers is still up for grabs. I know people who say, I will never donate to NRA as long as or until, and they go with other groups. Well,
right. Right. Well, and that was a self-inflicted wound for sure. I mean, the NRA, sure. Brian in the chat room just said the NRA made it easy. Yeah, the NRA did make it easy. It was a self-inflicted wound. They could have cleaned up their own house. And there's still a cadre inside the NRA that wants to continue with business as usual, which is just shocking to me since they almost died. I mean, the whole organization was almost destroyed, and they want to continue on. It's crazy. All right, we're 10 seconds out from rejoining. David Codrea is our guest. We're going to continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube-y things, etc. Let's get to it.
What the hell's an assault weapon? What isn't? If I assault you with a penguin, doesn't that make it an assault weapon? Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
Those assault penguins, second only to the trunk monkeys, man. I tell you what, trunk monkeys and assault weapons, it's the wildlife kingdom's answer to man. That's what it's all about. David Codrea is our guest. WarOnGuns.com is where you can find all his daily musings and links to all of his stories, including stuff he's been writing at Firearms News, etc. David, so there have been some pluses, right? We've seen some pluses. He had the executive order on the Second Amendment, instituting the task force and other things. We just saw this amicus brief in Hawaii, but there's some other things. Colorado's been asking a lot of the Colorado gun rights organizations and some of the senators and legislators on the right have been asking the government to intervene over there in their semi-automatic ban, and they're not seeing any help there. What are the biggest things that stick out to you in this 100 days that, maybe the biggest missed opportunity, I guess we could say?
Oh, geez. I haven't thought of it in terms of that because I just see so many. I would think probably the biggest issue would be states that are banning semi-automatics. I think that is something that really needs to be slapped down. And of course, we're waiting on the Supreme Court to stop kicking the can down the road and to decide on either Ocean State, Tactical, and Snope, and let us know what the heck's going on. But again, we run into the self-defense argument that I've seen some lawyers speculating that may turn around and bite us in the Supreme Court's basically deciding what they're going to do on that. Because again, unless you have the basic purpose for the Second Amendment, which is freedom, which is to resist tyranny, foreign and domestic, unless that is recognized, then you can come up with all kinds of excuses to let semi-automatic rifle and magazine bans stay and not take a look at them.
Right.
So I believe that the so-called quote unquote assault weapons is the big issue that we need to see resolved. But you're right, we do see positive things. The very fact that we have a White House that is willing to talk about protecting the Second Amendment is just such a sea change over what we have been used to, and what we've seen in the past, particularly with the Biden and the Obama administrations behind us. So just the fact that the White House is willing to talk about this is a real positive aspect for us. This business of the Justice Department going to the states and enforcing the Second Amendment, I love it when I hear this and when I see people jumping on this bandwagon, Michael, because over 20 years ago, I was part of a group that put a petition together to then Attorney General John Ashcroft. Ashcroft had said that the Second Amendment is an individual right. And so we put together a petition and we showed him everything that's going on in California. We said, we agree with you. It's an individual right. Our rights are being violated. The Justice Department, if a state were violating any other right, like standing in the doors of colleges and keeping people of different ethnic backgrounds from coming in, the Justice Department would have a team of lawyers down there, getting injunctions against these people and slapping them behind bars in no time. The Second Amendment is no different. And we put together a petition called the Ashcroft Petition, a petition for the protection of the Second Amendment. And this is back before the internet had really taken off in terms of being able to do things electronically. And so we actually collected nationwide over 40,000 mail-in signatures. These were people that took the time to print this thing out, to take it to their friends, to get it signed with their real names and send it back to us, their own postage. Okay. And I sent every one of these things. I had box after box. I mean, you imagine 40,000 sheets of paper, how many boxes that is, and sent it to the Justice Department. Of course, never heard a word from them about it. Which essentially proved that, they're going to make noises about the Second Amendment, but that's all they are. There's really no substance to it. And we had some very good responses to this Ashcroft petition. One of the proudest things that I've done, and I've still got this, a letter from Colonel Jeff Cooper, where he approved of the petition, wrote me a nice note telling me that he approved of it, and circulated it with his students there and got some signatures and sent it back to us. And that's a treasure that I have and that'll keep forever. And on the other side, I had to write then NRA ILA honcho. What was his J? Oh gosh, what was his name? I forget his name at this point. But there was an NRA guy out there who was discouraging people from signing the petition, telling people that myself and my other friend who were behind it were quote unquote wild-eyed radicals. Okay.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Yeah. Protecting the Second Amendment is a wild-eyed radical idea.
Yeah. It's like, what are we encroaching on your rice bowl here, pal, or what? But I had to write James J. Baker. Yeah, I wrote him a letter. I'm sure it's on file somewhere in Fairfax, buried in an attic, basically saying, you better call your attack dog off and tell him to stop, or you're going to hear from us again, and it won't be pleasant. So, we'll see. But isn't that something? Jeff Cooper endorsed this, and NRA was trying to kill it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's some irony there for sure. When you look at that and you go, wow, this is supposedly the preeminent gun rights organization in the country, and they don't want to support something like that. As I look at this, we are making some wins in the Second Amendment category, but now is not the time to grow weary in well-doing, right? Now is the time to press the attack. that's when you keep the momentum up. So if David Codrea was the gun czar, I know you hate that word, but I just love to think of David as the tyrant who basically says or else. What if you had the president's ear and could say do this, do that? What would be the biggest, what do you think would have the biggest effect? What would be your suggestion to the president on where to go next? What should we be doing?
I would like to explain to President Trump what the Second Amendment really means. I would like to show him quotations from Tench Cox. I would like to let him understand why take the guns first, due process later is un-American and wrong. I would like to let him know why the bump stock ban was wrong. I would love to have the president's ear. Okay. And that, I think, is what is the most important thing for what I've been suggesting, a Office of Second Amendment Protection and or civilian advisors to Pam Bondi's Second Amendment Task Force, to have the president's ear, because ultimately the buck stops here, like Harry Truman said. He's the one who makes the decisions. And we all know that Trump is a very mercurial, egotistical guy. He thinks he knows best. He comes out and says something, and he's not going to back down. And got the whole pride ego thing going. And I think everybody understands that about him. It's one of the reasons people think that he's so refreshing, is because he says what's on his mind, and he doesn't hold himself back and worry about what's politically correct. And you don't see that very often in a politician. And that's right. One of his traits that endears him to a lot of people. But it also can get us in trouble when he makes a statement that's wrong and his ego won't let him back down from it. Okay.
Right.
And I think that having the president's ear and being able to explain to the president would go a heck of a long way. So yeah, if I could do one thing, that would be it. It would be just to be able to have one-on-ones with the guy and let him know, and just let him ask questions and get him answers if he has questions and he wants to say something, and let him know how just making off-the-cuff statements without vetting them first and making sure that they're consistent with advancing the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Because, right. I mean, he's really not a Second Amendment guy. A lot of these people aren't Second Amendment guys, and it's amazing. We'll find comment posters on blogs that know more about it than Justice Department lawyers do. Okay, which is a sad commentary on the state of affairs, on the education in this country, on the requirements to be a lawyer in this country, that you could actually have lawyers and judges that are anti-gun. To me, is just, how is this even possible? It's almost like I can't fathom it. And I think back to my own education, then I think about what's going on in terms of education today, and what is it that the schools are teaching children about our form of government, about the Constitution, about the Declaration of Independence. They're teaching children to be ashamed of your heritage. They're teaching us to be ashamed that we're all a bunch of racists. They're teaching us that unless we embrace, not just live and let live, but we have to embrace and endorse and laud and applaud, all kinds of things that just go against traditional American values.
One of the problems with the president is that, first of all, he's a deal maker, right? And he always goes in, he tries to read the room, and he tries to tell people what they want to hear. And he's a maximalist. He's the guy that walks into a room and screams, "I want a motorcycle," when really all he was looking for was a bicycle, right? Because he knows he's going for the maximum. And so his comment on the whole, take guns, take the guns and worry about due process later, to me was part of he was trying to smooth over the deal making thing. And that's part of the problem, is that he doesn't a lot of times consider the long-term ramifications. And like you said, there's a little bit of egoism in there. And I think he is pro-gun at this point because it's, I think he's evolved a little bit from where he was back in the 90s when he wrote that book and basically was advocating for waiting periods and everything else. I think he's evolved a bit.
Sure.
But the bottom line is that he knows where his bread is buttered, and he knows that the support of the Second Amendment is important. So maybe it'll be convenient as long as it's convenient. I don't know. I'm hoping that he's had enough of a conversion to stick with it. But he's got to push harder in this next 100 days. And like you said, to get those stakeholders, the right ones in there, the Brandon Herreras, the Coleon Noirs, the Cam Edwards, the Alan Gottliebs, the David Codreas in there to get the right answers. He needs to understand it. And if he just continues to surround himself with sycophants and the same people that have been doing business as usual, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah. And here's what's unfortunate about this is that we've got midterms that'll be coming up sooner than we know. And we've got Republicans that have earned their own reputation for being the party that seizes defeat from the jaws of victory, that can't get anything done, that compromises. And if gun owners lose the fire in their bellies, particularly when they see things like the Trump administration arguing that machine guns should not be covered by the Second Amendment because they're not in common use and for lawful self-defense. When we see those kinds of arguments advanced, it just makes gun owners wonder, well, what's the point? What's the point of doing those things that are necessary to win elections? Because it's more than just showing up and voting to win elections. If you want to win elections, you have to be, Democrats show this, you have to be able to organize. You have to be able to attract donations. You have to be able to influence, the social media sphere. You have to be able to have advocates that are out there for you. You have to be able to get the fire in their bellies and inspire people. I've tried to do all these things, in my past life. I've walked precincts, for goodness sakes. I've gotten petitions signed, standing on street corners, for goodness sakes, just all the things that you need to do. I've donated to candidates. How many gun owners actually do that? We have a lot of people that complain this isn't good enough, but it seems too often the main contribution will be to make a disparaging comment under a blog post or on Twitter or Facebook or someplace like that.
Keyboard warriors, right? Keyboard warriors. That's what it's all about. David Codrea is our guest. We got to take a break. We're going to be back. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right. David Codrea is our guest. The Michael Duke Show.
Where did you dip your beard in coffee come from?
Oh, man, I always dip my beard. I'm drinking and down, and I got coming out. I'm like, man, I love coffee, but it's, they call it the flavor saver for a reason, right? It's the thing there. Eat a little barbecue, and I'll be eating it all day, kind of thing, Anyway, David Codrea, I want to touch on this article that you wrote here earlier. Well, I guess not this month, but just last month, where you were talking about the kind of continued bipolar discussion. You get into it. You remind me of the, I think that was when you and I first met. I think Len Savage introduced us at the beginning, because I'd been talking with Len about his struggles, and you'd been writing about Len, and I think that was one of the first things. And then you got into it with the Gunwalker scandal. And more. And what was the name of I've forgotten the gentleman's name. He's passed away now. Who is who is your partner in that was doing all the digging on the Fast and Furious thing? What was the name of the blogger? It was
Mike Vanderboegh.
Mike Vanderboegh. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Let me just, hold on a second. I'm going to go off camera for a second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I want to show you something.
All right, David. Oh, he's got a princess palace there too. I love that. For his grandkids. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, gee whiz! I didn't mean to have that revealed. And everybody sees, I'm not this ferocious person that I try to pretend to be. Let's see if we can see this at all with light. Allow this to be seen at all. Can you see that?
I could see it. Yeah, I could see it. There you go.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Mike used to smuggle magazines into states like Connecticut that banned them as part of a defy, resist, evade, and smuggle. Okay.
Wow.
And this was a magazine that was one of the last in his collection that I got. And so I put it in a shadow box along with a 3% patch, because Mike was also the founder of the 3% movement. Okay. And he was a smuggler, as you can see. That says, is that
Right.
backwards?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I can see it. No, I can see it. No, it's front ways. I can see it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, good. I see it
Yeah.
backwards.
That's great.
So anyway, I put this together as kind of a tribute to Mike. He died in 2016. He's been gone from us for a long time. That's really sad. And Mike was just a brilliant patriot. And I still find myself to this day going back and referencing things on his Sipsey Street Irregulars blog, because they're still relevant to this day. And I wish that he could be with us still, not only for personal reasons and missing a friend and things like that, but I think of everything that we're in right now and what contributions he would make to understanding what's going on and the joy that he would have doing that. Mike was a happy warrior. You know, he could get angry sometimes. He could get irascible as hell sometimes, but that's fine. We all can. But boy, oh boy, I think what would Mike have to say about this today? That thought never seems to go away. And he was an amazing guy. I was a regular at Sipsey Street. He sent me one of those patches and everything else. I was really into what he was talking about, and just supported his whole cause there. He was a guy that wasn't afraid to take a stand, and I admired that. Always did, and he definitely is missed in that regard. But I do want to talk with you a little bit here about some of the things that are still going on. This ATF and DOJ, still using definitions that came from the bad old days today. To me, if Bondi was serious about this, if the president was serious about really creating and protecting the Second Amendment, that would have been the first thing. They would have basically just dropped all the cases that they were currently running that had, that were even questionable on a Second Amendment basis. And yet they've kind of still proceeding ahead on some of these. And it's a little troubling. And I'd like to see that change. What it brings to mind to me, the question, who's minding the store? When I see these things happen, I think, are we dealing with rogue holdovers from the last administration who are going to do what it is they want to do regardless? Or is this actually considered policy from top down? What is it? And you have that sense of unease. Look, everybody understands that this administration's only been there for 100 days. Everybody understands they got a ton of stuff coming at them. They got activist judges that are blocking deportations of known criminals. That what's the point? If you're an illegal alien and you're known to be an illegal alien, that alone ought to be enough. I don't understand why you need to come up with some kind of Alien Enemies Terrorist Act or something like that. But the bottom line is everybody understands that these people are overwhelmed and that they have so many things coming at them from so many different directions and so much resistance, and the Democrats attacking them as always. We expected that. The media backing Democrats.
Hold on, David. Hold on.
What the hell's an assault weapon?
If we could just figure out how to get all of the murder guns and the attack guns and not keep selling those to people and just sell protection guns, I think that would be great and solve a lot of problems.
Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
A guy who has no murder or attack guns, only protection guns, David Codrea. he checked all the tags before he bought them. He made sure that there was just no protection, all protection guns. Welcome back to the program. Thanks for coming in. David Codrea is our guest. We were just talking about the immense weight of all the things that are, I'm sure, coming at the president. It's only been 100 days. And yet here we are looking at the next 100 days. We're kind of doing after action review, pros and cons. Do you have hope, David? Do you have hope that he's going to continue to be pushing in the right direction? Do you think there's going to be, anything massive? Will we look back on the 200th day and say we've really made some gains? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have. I definitely have hope. I think that the more they listen to us, the more hope I will have. I would love to see. I have a lot more hope if I would see an invitation extended to having some private actors come into this Second Amendment task force to be advisors to analyze some of these cases. And in a sense, what's the word from the movie? Help us help you. Okay. Help us help you. That's what, I end a lot of my essays with a plea. Let us help, Mr. President. Okay. Let us help. We're ready, willing, and able, and we have all kinds of people that would be qualified. And again, the fact that these are people that are representatives of organizations and things like that rely on donations and things makes them able to be influenced by their members, because nobody wants to lose members or have their members second guessing them on social media posts or anything like that. And I would like to, challenge a lot of our pro-gun organizations to, number one, start making waves to demand a seat at the table, which you deserve, because Trump is in office and his administration is in office because of gun owners. Without us, they would not be in office. Everybody understands that. Okay. Right. So demand a place at the table. We don't want to just be, have scraps swept our way. We deserve to be full and equal partners on that. And also, let's start taking a look at the lawsuits that we're filing and the arguments that we're making. And why is it that we always leave the militia out of the legal arguments that we make and rely exclusively on self-defense? Okay, why is that? Okay, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid that, Phil Donahue is going to get some hicks out and, make us all look like a bunch of, yokels?
Half a dozen guys with 3 teeth between them, and backwards baseball hats. This is the militia. Well, what was it Lysander Spoon said? Who is the militia? The entire people. That is who the militia is, and that's what it's supposed to be.
And also, let's watch this in common use. Oh, we hear the granddaughter just walked in.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Let's watch this in common use at the time and not let it be used as a weapon against us. I understand that in common use at a time can be a very powerful legal argument to say you can't ban these because everybody's got them. By the same token, you can't limit yourself and say, well, you can't have this because it's not in common use. The Second Amendment says arms. It doesn't say what kind of arms. It says arms. Right.
It could be laser rifles. It could be anything. I mean, it's arms. That's what it's supposed to be about. There's nothing in the Second Amendment about self-defense. It's just, it is what it is. It's arms, period.
Every terrible implement of the soldier.
Yeah. And when they talk about, they don't limit the First Amendment as the technology has changed from the town crier to the hand-printed publication to the internet. Why should they change it for the flintlock to the machine gun? There shouldn't be any changes to that as well. David, we're down to about 3 minutes. I want to give you the floor for your final thoughts for today before we let you go. Give us words of hope, David, I guess, on the way out the door here. Give us some words of hope and your thoughts.
Well, we should always have hope, because here's the thing, and this is something that Republicans need to understand, particularly when they support anti-gun Republicans like Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, who is actually a Giffords nominee. Okay. You can't have these people in the party. You can't have the party supporting these people, because if there's no difference between a Republican and a Democrat, what do we care? You know, what do I care who gets voted in? And if a Democrat happens to win that seat instead of an anti-gun Republican, well, I'm sorry, Republicans, until you learn better, you're just going to have to feel our pain. Because here's the thing. Well, then you'd have all these Democrats in, and they would do this and they would do that. Right. They would. No question about it. They want to take all our guns. Are you going to let them take yours? Okay.
Right. Right.
What if they vote on this and they say, turn them all in, Mr. and Mrs. America, like Dianne Feinstein? You know, what an insane thing to say. Good God. Okay. Are you going to turn yours in, Mr. and Mrs. America? Yeah. Really? You know, what ultimately, you know, can they do? They can say these are illegal and you have to turn them in. Well, I'm sorry, no, your move.
Yeah, exactly.
If we're not willing to do that, then what's the point of the Second Amendment?
Yeah, when guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. Did you just turn a huge portion of the United States into outlaws because they refuse to comply with your unconstitutional law? That's the biggest thing. And look, we're making headway. We're winning. You're looking at the new numbers for the new purchases. You're seeing more and more people, ethnicities, minorities, women, even people who are centrist and left are buying that. I mean, people are buying into the Second Amendment.
No, they're not. They're buying into guns. Gun culture 2.0, purely for self-defense. But you know what? I don't celebrate when I see the numbers, because I ask, how do they vote? And if they buy guns and they still vote for Democrat gun grabbers, they're not doing me any favors. And I'm not going to sit there and celebrate them. But here's my final note of hope, okay, is that the fact that they haven't come for the guns shows that the Second Amendment is working. And that gives me great hope. The Second Amendment is working because they haven't come from the guns, because they know that they can't. The Second Amendment is working. Okay.
Yeah, no, they can't. We'll chat for just a second about that after the show here. But David Codrea is our guest. Waronguns.com. That's where you can go to find all of his writings, his daily musings. He always links some great stories from going on around the country. His Only One series is fascinating. You should go take a look at that as well. David Codrea, as always, my friend, it's a pleasure. Good to see you.
Good, Michael. Thank you.
Hold the line for a second. Folks, we're out of time for hour one. Hour two is dead ahead. We'll continue, probably have some phone calls and more. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see that more and more people are getting involved with guns. I would hope, and if they still vote, you know, I think there was some shock, especially around COVID, when all these people were worried about their own protection and they went out and they discovered it wasn't as easy to get a gun as it was to get a library book, right? That's what Obama had told us. It's easier to get a gun than it is to get a library. And they found that was a lie. So I think a lot of people's eyes were open, but you're right. If they just go get a gun for personal protection and then still vote the same way, they're doing more damage than anything else. But, I think it's at least a good sign that maybe we're slowly winning some converts over, but we can't grow weary in well-doing, right?
Yeah, people have to understand that, you know, it gets into the whole FUD thing. You know, there's the Gun Owners for Safety, which is, you know, one of the news services just put out, a gun group says this, and it's not a gun group. It's Gun Owners for Safety, which is a shadow organization of FUDs for Giffords. Okay. And it's these AstroTurf organizations, like you had Americans for Gun Safety several years back. And again, it's all these groups that want to introduce what they call common sense gun control. It's all divide and conquer, like 97%, you know, to get gun owners and non-gun owners together to discuss what we can agree on. And what we can agree on is they can agree on they want more gun control. They want this incremental step. And we know where that all leads, because it's incremental step after incremental step to the end goal. We've known it since Senator Thomas Dodd, who wrote the Gun Control Act, said he would like to see all guns banned. We've known it for Nelson Pete Shields of Handgun Control, Inc., okay, the predecessor of the Brady, the National Coalition to Ban Handguns, I think it was when he said this, that we have to take it one step at a time. We won't get it all at once, but ultimately the goal is to ban all handguns. Well, that's their ultimate goal. So if you let them have this beachhead without a fight, then they're just going to use that to secure their base and to proceed on their next incursion deeper into your territory. Right. I mean, you know, it's classic invasion technique. It's no magic. All you got to do is, you know, just kind of look at military tactics and you see what these people are doing.
No, and I think you're right. We have to target those that are the most vulnerable, which should be Republicans, which are not really pro-gun Republicans. We saw it in Texas, where the Texas Republican Party supported the guy who Brandon Herrera was running against. Herrera almost beat him, even with no support from the party. And the guy is soft on guns. I mean, it's amazing. Why would we do in Texas of all places, right? So we need to do the same thing here in Alaska. It's Murkowski. She's wishy-washy on guns. You know, I'm in Alaska, where we have more guns per capita than anywhere in the country. You know, but it's crazy.
She changed the rules, right?
Yeah. Well, we need to those are the folks we need to focus on, replacing the players that are talk out of one side of their mouth, but when the rubber meets the road, they are anti-gun. Final thoughts.
Ultimately, that depends on everybody watching this, okay? Being force multipliers.
Yeah.
You know, getting involved, not just being consumers.
Well, I can't wait to read your new article coming out on Firearms News today, you think?
It's probably going to be today, maybe Monday, who knows? You know, the IT team is different from the editorial team. And I've also got one I'm going to be sticking into Ammo Land. As soon as I finish the show, I'm going to finish up this article. It's this anti-gun Democrat endorsed by Moms Demand Action who just got busted for being part of a child sex ring sting, who has put out tweets wanting to assassinate Trump, saying it's the Second Amendment thing to do. Okay.
Wow. Wow. There's some deep irony there. That's for sure. Deep irony. All right, David Codrea, again, waronguns.com. That's where you go to find a clearinghouse of everything that he's doing. David, as always, love talking to you, my friend. We'll do this again, and we'll chat again soon here in the near future. Okay.
Good, Michael. Thank you much.
Thanks for coming on board and joining us. We really appreciate it. David Codrea, again, waronguns.com. You should go over there right now and just put it on your hot bar. I don't know if he has a newsletter or not, but he should have a newsletter or something. Anyway, go over to waronguns.com and get it checked out. All right, we are coming up. Hour 2 is here in just a second. Let me get the phone lines turned on, and we'll do that right now. See if it's going to bump my volume up real quick. Hey, it didn't. All right, fantastic. Okay, we're going to jump in. Phone lines are now open, and we're ready to have our discussions right there. 319-527-3864, 319-527-3864. If you want to sound off on anything that we just talked about in the last hour, we'd love to hear from you. On the Department of Justice, not only did the Department of Justice file an amicus brief about this and weigh in on that, but also there was another surprise in Hawaii having to do with their semi-auto ban, which is kind of crazy and shocking. So we're going to talk about that as well. Meanwhile, if you want, again, sound off, 319-527-3864. We'd love to hear you, and we'll hear from you, and we'll see what you guys have to say this morning. Is there anything else that we got? Who was that Dem? Oh, who was the Dem? I don't know. You'll have to go over to Ammo Land and read David's story about it here in just a minute. All right, let's get to it. We're gonna get cracking. Call me up if you'd like. Hour 2 is right now. The Michael Duke Show.
buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out themichaeldukesshow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the part. Pal.
The Michael Duke Show. I have two guns.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Duke Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
Take my rifle, this is my gun. This is for fighting, it's for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday, baby. Yeah, you know what it is. It's that one day a week where we get a chance to talk about one of our favorite issues, which of course is the Second Amendment. And we get to talk about gun rights and tips, tricks, tactics, the whole thing, what's going on around the country, and more. Thank you for coming in and joining us. Hour 2 of the show today, a little different. Normally we have Willie Waffle. Because of my traveling and everything last week and all the stuff that was going on, he couldn't be on last week. And then last night he sent me a text that he is suffering from a bad bout of food poisoning, and said he oof. I mean, just oof. He just can't. He's fallen and he can't get up. So, thoughts and prayers out to Willie Waffle. Hopefully he'll be back with us next week, because I really, really wanted to talk about the Thunderbolts and some of the other things. So we may have to take him for 2 segments next week just to get caught up on all the good stuff. All the good stuff. All right. So hopefully he feels better and we'll be back at it next week with Willie Waffle. So that means it's just you and me today in hour 2. And with the phone lines open at 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. You can sound off on any on anything that you want that's related to the Second Amendment and more. So it's time. Come on down. Let's talk about it. David had some very valid points and some things that I hadn't considered before, which is why I always love talking to him. He is, his whole thread on the idea of common use, and how the idea of common use could be weaponized is a little spooky. As David said, the right to keep and bear arms is not just the right to keep and bear certain types of arms. It's all arms. And what happens when when technology changes? What if it was, what if it was, like I said earlier, a laser rifle or a rail gun or a Gauss gun or something like that all of a sudden was that was the new hotness, right? Well, all of a sudden, because it's not in common use, because it's brand spanking new, you can't have one, you can't deal with it, and they make that decision. That's a problem. The founding fathers never envisioned the internet, Facebook, right? Cell phones, immediate transfer of information and news. They never envisioned that, but they wrote the Second Amendment so that it applies equally to all those things. And yet the Second Amendment, or the First Amendment, the Second Amendment is always treated as if it's an afterthought. Well, that only meant muskets and it only meant cannons. It didn't mean anything. That's part of the problem, is that they wrote this for all ages and for all times, for all types of technology. And so I hadn't thought about that in common use component. We'd seen it obviously with like ARs and everything else, but you know, it's a problem. It's a problem, and I'm glad that we were able to go over a lot of that stuff with David Codrea, who was in the last hour. If you missed it, you'll have to go back and listen on the podcast, or go watch the replay on Facebook, YouTube, or Rumble for any of those things. All right, I got some stories, including the latest of what's going on in Hawaii. But before we do that, let's go to the phones. We'll take some calls and see what you guys have to say. We'll start over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Candy from Anchor Point.
Hello, Candy. What's on your mind this morning?
Well, I think that if they take away the gun rights for everything, which is what they'd like to do, because only the government wants to have guns, you know, the crooks, aka. Anyway, they better take away a knife, because that's sharp. You hurt somebody with that. How about take away all cars, because people get run over all the time. How about trains, planes, and all that kind of stuff? You know, can't have anything that'll hurt anybody.
Right. Well, don't give them any idea. Don't give them any ideas, Candy, because again, we know. You know, we saw what happened in England, right? They outlawed guns in England, and then pretty soon there was a bunch of stabbings, and I mean, actually, violent crime actually increased after they took the guns away from the British citizens, and then it became knives, and then they were talking about whether chefs had to register their knives, and then you had Idris Elba, who's a very good actor, but obviously not very smart when it comes to this issues. He even weighed in on the whole knife issue by saying this.
The truth is that kitchen knives are perhaps 25% of the knives used in most of the terrible crimes. That's one of the stats in the films. And those kitchen knives are usually a domestic situation. Okay. So kitchen knives, of course, it's very difficult. They're domestic knife. I do think there is areas of innovation that we can do with kitchen knives. I hate to say it, not all kitchen knives need to have a point on them. That sounds like a crazy thing to say, but actually it would reduce, you know, you can still cut your food without the point on the knife, which is an innovative way to sort of look at it.
So we're going to make knives that have no points. I mean, that was his answer to this. This is a violence problem. Like you said, I mean, there was just, what was it yesterday, day before? There was the car thing where they ran over a whole bunch of people. I mean, we've seen that used. We saw it happen in was it Nice, France, where the guy took the Ryder truck and ran over 89 people or something. That's the thing. What we have is a violence problem. We have a problem with violence because some people are evil. And that people just can't wrap their heads around the idea that people can be evil and they need to be punished and persecuted. And instead, they try to anthropomorphize and make it the fault of the tool, the firearm in this case. And they only focus on firearms. Like you said, they're not outlawing cars. They're not outlawing knives. I mean, they are in some places, but not here.
No, and that's my point. If you take away one thing that could hurt somebody, why not take away the whole thing? Why not just put us back down to using kids' crayons and little scissors that you'd give a 2-year-old?
Well, why not just put us in a barrel and feed us through a bunghole? I mean, that would be safe, right? I mean, we'd be totally safe if they just put us in a 6x6 room and fed us through a slot in the door until we died. That would be fantastic. But again, there's danger in freedom is all I'm saying. There's danger in being free.
You know, it's people are responsible for what they do. If you use a knife and you kill somebody, you're responsible, not the knife. If you pull a trigger on the gun was not going to shoot anybody until you had it in your hand or whoever had it in their hand and pulled that trigger. The gun is not responsible, the person is. What's the matter with people that they don't understand that? It doesn't take a genius to understand that kind of stuff.
Well, it's because people don't want to ascribe that kind of stuff. They want to ascribe it to the thing and not the person. They want to excuse the victims. They want to excuse the perpetrator as victims is what I should have said. And that's how they want to do it. Final thoughts here, Candy.
Hello?
I can hear you. Go ahead. Final thoughts here, Candy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was just my thoughts. I
Okay.
just wanted to call in.
All right. Well,
say what I was thinking about it.
thank you so much for calling in. We appreciate you being part of it today. Thank you for sounding off as well. 319-527-3864 is the phone number. Let's go over here. Looks like Fred is on the line. Fred, calling in all the way out from Rhode Island. Hello, my friend. What's on your mind today?
Hey, good morning, Michael. You know, David Codrea made some very good points. However, the one issue we never really got into is the source. You know, the source of a lot of this stuff that's going on. I don't know if they, you know, to what level they've hand-tied the Trump administration as to not reacting, or the Supreme Court is not reacting to taking more of a positive step on just releasing, getting rid of a lot of this nonsense that the left progressives have been pushing. You know, it's one of those things that they got to start paying more attention to the source of all this.
Right.
You know, the source being, like I say, the progressives and the influence that the world governments, the globalists want to exercise over certain groups like the progressives through money. I mean, Doge opened up a lot of doors, opened up a lot of eyes. That's just some really strange things going on in the Biden administration, and possibly as far back as Clinton, possibly even before that. But the thing is, there's these people there's a lot more to Doge than we think, and it isn't just the money; it's the influence, it's the power, it's all this influence that we're being hit with from outside the country. I think a lot of it is from the outside the country. A lot of money, a lot of influence, a lot of deals going on in the shadows that nobody ever hears about, and that has to be exposed. We can get to the root cause of that and where it comes from. These people can't hide under the rock and manipulate in the shadows any longer. The truth will come out, regardless of what the media try to hide, on the lies they want to tell and the deflections they want to put up to get everybody to look the other way. It's not going to work anymore.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And I think that, again, we need to look at the source of this. We need to understand. And I think more than just the source as far as peoples and monies, we also need to understand the mindset behind it. What is the motivation, the psychological motivation? And again, I think it goes back to people who believe that government is the solution to every problem. That's where this
boils down to total control over the people.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. I mean, these people believe, there's people out there that believe what I've called for years the narrative. The narrative is that the only way for society to move forward in a positive and meaningful way is with the direct, benevolent intervention of government. We just couldn't do it on our own. And so there's a whole bunch of people out there who are pushing for that agenda. And because we are standing in the way, us rugged individualists, us pro-Second Amendment, us pro-freedom people, us pro-leave us alone people, are standing in the way of that kind of idyllic socialist utopia, top-down, government controls everything mindset. We are the enemy. And having the tools and the ability to be able to defend ourselves is the biggest problem for them.
Well, I think the biggest thing we should be doing right now is to analyze everything that's on the books that they're trying to push right now. The assault weapons ban, the magazine ban, and all these other the semi-auto ban. This is just created smoke and mirrors to try to slip it through or some type of self-justification as to the solution to a non-problem. I mean, they've been pushing this thing with the assault weapons ban on features. The main thing with the assault weapons ban, with the ARs and the AKs and all these other things, is features: pistol grip, collapsible stock, heat shield, flash hider, all these features. And the features don't make the weapon. Features are just features. They're like chrome reverse on your car doesn't make the car go any faster. Putting a racing stripe on it doesn't qualify your automobile to race in the Grand Prix. It's just features. And people are being bullied, being totally buffaloed on this whole thing. I say the silent majority that doesn't understand the problem, and they're not being, they're just being educated by fools who even have less knowledge of the problem.
Yeah.
That's what it is between those who don't know and those who know even less. That's the problem we're dealing with.
I agree, Fred. I couldn't agree more. All right, my friend. Well, it's always good to hear from you behind enemy lines, deep in there in Rhode Island. We appreciate you calling in and giving us your thoughts today.
All right, Michael, you have a good week. Take care now.
Thanks so much. Fred from Rhode Island calling in this morning. And that, my friend, brings us up to the next break. I still got to get to these stories, and the phone lines are still open. I mean, David actually, he posited a good story. If somebody stood up there, another Dianne Feinstein or somebody stood up and said, turn them in, Mr. and Mrs. America, because for the greater good, right? For the greater good, turn them in. What would you do? What would be your stand on that? Would it be the start of an Irish democracy? Or would it be the start of capitulation? What's your take on that? You can sound off 319-527-3864. You can also join us in the chat room. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show /live if you want to be there right now. Back with more Firearms Friday right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, my friends. How you doing? You ready to go? Yeah, that's the thing that goes up. That's the heat shield. That's the thing that goes up. Barrel shroud. It's the shoulder thing that goes up. Did you know about that? I mean, that's other things. How come the turn them in didn't work for illegal aliens? Whoa, man. Whoa. Richie said, if someone in prison can make a shank and stick someone 93 times in 15 seconds, knives without points aren't the solution. Again, what was the car? What was the story? It was this car attack. There was a car attack in Juneau. Oh, there was one in Vancouver. That was the one in Vancouver. He'd killed several people. And then there's another one just happened in Japan. Japanese police have arrested a man after allegedly driving a car and attacking school children. I mean, where's the, where is the outrage on the cars? 11 people killed in that Vancouver attack. It's crazy. It's crazy stuff. But there you go. That's what's going on. Anytime the government incentivizes the citizens to do a thing, I'm always leery of what they get in that transaction. Yeah, no. Anytime, I mean, this again, be ungovernable, right? Stay ungovernable, my friends. Yeah, and he was known to the police. That was the other thing. The guy in Vancouver, he was known. He was on what was the thing that was in? He was on an extended leave from a mental institution, from mental health care. It's madness. It's just crazy stuff. screams for help. That's what it was. And nobody can do what they need to do. Anthony just said, in my headcanon on the MD show, Fred is an embedded covert asset sending intelligence back from deep behind enemy lines. It's not untrue. Not untrue. Could you imagine? I mean, it's like Chris Chang. I admire Chris Chang, but I mean, how do you live so deep into the blue territory there? How do you it would just be nearly impossible. Just be nearly impossible to deal with all that. All right. What would happen if a Waymo car that is AI driven drives into a crowd of people? Well, that would be an accident, right? I mean, unless the AI was built by Skynet. I mean, just don't know. Don't know. All right. We're coming up here. We're about 50 seconds out from rejoining the radio. We're going to get into this story. Unless there's some other stories that you guys want to hit on, we'll talk about the we'll talk about the new assault weapons ban that the Gruesome Twosome have put up. Adam Schiff, Chris Murphy, those guys. They're real pieces of crap, both of them. But, I digress. No name calling. As much as I want to. No name calling. All right. We're going to get to it. Please like and share. Like and subscribe. Ring the bell. Do all the YouTube-y things. Do all do all the things that you're supposed to do, my friends. You know what it is. Do all that stuff. Here we go. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's do this thing.
What the hell is an assault weapon? Does that mean that if we hurt your feelings, you should consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can accept that. Here's Michael Dukes. Kind of a but somewhat funny.
Am I though really kind of a Richard? I mean, I'm asking for a friend. Just asking for a friend. So what would you do? Right? It's still a question. I'd still love to hear what you have to say. Is it a no? Is it a maybe? Is it a hell no? Is it I'd give up some token guns, but I'd bury the rest in the backyard? Is it, it's an interesting thought experiment. If they just showed up on television tomorrow and said, to protect everybody, we need to do this. What do we, and so turn them in, Mr. and Mrs. America. What would your take be? You know where I stand on it, but how about the rest of you? What are you doing with that? Something to think about. You could tell me if you want. 319-527-3864. Terry in the chat room just said, hell no. She just said, and Brian earlier just said, not only no, but hell no. So we know how some of you stand out there, you radicals, you ungovernables. But it's for the common good. Why do you hate people, Terry and Brian? Why do you hate people? Don't you want them to be safe? Right? Don't you want them to be safe? All right. So I mentioned it earlier, but some stories happening around the country. Hawaii kind of in the spotlight. Some interesting developments. The latest action from the Department of Justice was a surprise, but it's kind of what we've been wanting. It's kind of what we've been asking for. It seems that the DOJ may be listening to some people. They've decided to file an amicus brief in the challenge to Hawaii's law that makes all private property gun-free unless the owner specifically opts to allow concealed carry. And we've seen this attempted before. They've done this in California. They did it in New York, basically stating unless for example, a business, you're going to go into your local convenience store, bodega, whatever, clothing store, whatever. And unless they have a sign on the door that specifically states we allow concealed carry, or you are able to go up and ask the owner or cashier or whatever, am I allowed to conceal carry in here? Unless that happens, you are technically breaking the law, right? Well, there was a lawsuit filed in Hawaii, and they filed it against the attorney general and said, hey, this is not right. Essentially, what you're doing is you are intentionally discouraging average otherwise law-abiding citizens from the ability to conceal carry, because any place that they walk into, because let's face it, if you're a store and there's many businesses that just, they're not interested in politics. They want to provide you a good or a service. That's what they're there for. We're there to make money. We're there to provide a good and a service and give you what you need. And they don't really want to get political, right? They don't want to alienate half of their customer base by taking a stance on one thing or another. So if they put up a sign that says we allow concealed carry, well, now they've just pissed half oh my God, the radical left is just going to come out and boycott their store and throw eggs and do everything else. The same thing if they put up a sign that said we don't allow, that we don't allow guns in the store, concealed carry. I mean, there's a bank that I won't bank with here in the state of Alaska that's got Alaska in the name that I will not bank with and never will. Why? Because they've got a big sign that they posted on all their doors that says we don't allow no firearms or weapons in the building, even if you're concealed carry. I won't do business with them. That's just how it is, because they've taken that stance. They decided to get into that argument, whereas other banks don't have anything on the doors, and I'm okay with them, right? So if this is just another stealthy backdoor way for them to discourage concealed carry in the state of Hawaii, which has already had a hard enough time trying to get people to get, they had to get the smackdown from the Supreme Court to be even able to allow citizens to be able to get concealed carry permits, right? Well, now the Department of Justice has filed an amicus brief in support of the petitioners of this lawsuit. Costas Moros over on Twitter writes, to my knowledge, this is the first ever Supreme Court brief filed by the United States in full support of petitioners challenging a gun law as unconstitutional under the Second Amendment. But, the amicus brief in Heller that the Bush administration did was more wishy-washy, yada, yada, yada. This is the big thing. The vampire rule, that's what it's being called on the internet. The vampire rule was created by anti-gun academics who openly stated that the aim of laws like this, where you have to have permission to walk into a private piece of property, was aimed to discourage concealed carry. That was the whole aim, the vampire law, which is, of course, meaning that you have to invite a vampire in. They can't enter your house without your invitation, kind of thing. So they call it the vampire law. It's shocking. But the good news is that the Department of Justice has now filed this brief in support of it, which I think will have some weight and some merit. As David said, in California, if they were trying to do the things that they have done in the past in California against gun owners, if they were trying to prevent people from standing in a doorway, or they had to forcibly segregate blacks and whites in dormitories and did all these other things, the Department of Justice would be there tomorrow with a plane load of attorneys and injunctions, and people would go to jail over First Amendment rights. Just because it's the Second Amendment doesn't mean that they shouldn't be doing the same thing. So that's some good news. In another surprising twist, Hawaii lawmakers have now stopped the semi-automatic ban that they were about to pass. Tom Knighton over at Bearing Arms writes about this. And he's reporting from the HawaiiNewsNow.com. State senators from county and neighbor island districts rose up to kill an effort to ban assault rifles Wednesday at the Capitol. It was the only major debate as lawmakers approved hundreds of bills with little discussion. Supporters of what they called an assault weapons ban said the limit of a 10-round capacity for automatic rifles, they're semi-automatic rifles, but would reduce the risk of heavily armed mass killers, limiting their bullets so that they could be stopped by police, which again has never shown. I mean, still one of the most deadly school shootings in history was the Virginia Tech shooting, and the guy had a handful of 10-round magazines and 15-round magazines and two pistols, right? I mean, it's just it. Anyway, but supported by a gallery full of gun rights supporters, rural senators in Hawaii said the bill would disarm people who need weapons to take on feral pigs and other invasive species and harm hunters who have had larger magazines for years. Senator Joy Buenaventura from Puna said she was a longtime supporter of gun control, but many people she knew owned guns or magazines that could be banned. So this is unusual. Somebody who is a supporter of gun control, admittedly anti-gun, says we're actually making them criminals by possession of magazines that we had legalized before they bought it. Now, by their mere possession, because we decide to pass this bill, we decide to label them as criminals, and that to me is unethical and shouldn't be tolerated by this body. Wow, really? I mean, it's like somebody came down and tapped her on the head with a rod of common sense. I mean, really? Yeah, I mean, that's shocking. And then Waianae Senator Samantha DeCourt said the bill in its original condition would not only restrict law-abiding citizens who carry, but this also restricts our law enforcement officers, which, again, why law enforcement officers should become a secondary class or a different class than regular law-abiding citizens is beyond me. Why should we? There should be no delineation between law-abiding citizens and law enforcement. There should be no special privileges. Period. Full stop. End of story. Like I said earlier, you want to hear all about the only ones? Go to David Codrea's website, waronguns.com, and click on the Only Ones tab, and you'll see story after story. Because for those of you who don't know, when I say only ones, that's from the old adage that, police and military are the only ones that should have firearms. That was an argument for years. They should be the only ones because they're the only ones that can be trusted. And you'll see story after story of abuse and wrongdoing and illegality by police officers, misuse of firearms by police officers and everything else. Again, never taking into account the fact that statistically, this is from our conversation with Dr. Lott, we just talked about this again here not too long ago. Statistically, concealed carry people who have permits and who have gone through, they are less likely to commit crimes than law enforcement officers. They are more law-abiding than the police. Anyway, sorry, I digressed there for a second. But this idea that somehow they're going to separate two separate law-abiding and law enforcement. So anyway, when it was all said and done, this terrible, horrible, horrific bill was defeated. And it was anti-gun lawmakers who crossed over the aisle to vote against it. Now, that's highly unusual. I don't think it's some kind of tidal wave. I don't think this is kind of a sea change. But the fact that this I had to read her comment like 2 or 3 times and be like, wow, that we're making people criminals by possession of magazines that we had legalized before they bought it. Now the mere possession, because we decide to pass this bill, we decide to label them as criminal. And to me, that's unethical and should not be tolerated. Which is exactly what happened with the bump stocks. It's exactly what happened with the arm braces. It's exactly what's happened time and time and time again after the government has said, oh, no, it's totally legal. And then days, months, years later, they come back and say, oh, no, we decided that's illegal now. Now you're a felon. You have to destroy it, turn it in, or get rid of it. I mean, shocking. Again, I'm not saying that this is a massive turnaround in some kind of anti-gun, mass conversion, but it is interesting. It is interesting to see somebody from that side of the camp, that side of the aisle, suddenly come to the realization that this is unethical and it's not right. It definitely is not, it is not fair in terms of fair play and everything else. So, interesting stuff. We got more coming up. We're going to continue here in just a second. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more in just a moment. One final segment dead ahead. Normally it's Willie, but maybe we'll just do a little freewheeling stuff. 319-527-3864 if you want to call in for this final segment. 319-527-3864. By the way, if you're down on the peninsula, are you going out to the Kenai Peninsula Sport Rec and Trade Show this weekend? Starts tonight, 6 p.m. Free beer for those that show up tonight. That's what I heard. Go check it out. All right, we got to go. Back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes on Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Anthony. Man, he's been in rare form this week. I think he's won the internet for the week this time. He's had some great comments this week. Sure, the enforcement arm of a government should be the only people with a force multiplier to use in and on society. What's the worst that could happen? Right? What's the worst that could happen? Absolutely nothing. Jeffrey said when I was talking about, do you give them some token guns and bury the rest? Jeffrey says, if you have to bury your guns, you're too late. No, it's the old adage of, if you're deciding, if about the time you buried your guns is the time you should start digging them back up. That was I think it was Jeff Cooper or somebody that said something like that. So that's exactly it. Yeah. Brian said, but if you bury them, what's the point? When would you dig them up? About the time you buried them. That's about the time you need to dig them up is when you bury them for sure. Lisa said, nope, not giving up on my guns. Yeah. Again, I think, what they would find is that they would find a country that is full of mass civil disobedience. There was the old small arms survey. Remember the small arms survey? How they used to say that there was like, oh man, this must have been 15 years ago. They're like, oh, there's 200 million guns in this country. And I was like, just doing the math on my fingers and toes and going, you guys are way off. I mean, way off. I can't, I think that number is, and then of course they've continually updated it. And because by my estimates, just based on Nick's background checks, war bring homes from World War I and World War II, before they stopped that practice in Korea and Vietnam. There's probably still some bringbacks from Korea, but not Vietnam. And then of course, just, people passing them and not, by my estimates, there's got to be closer to 750 million guns in this country. The latest numbers, I think, from the small arms survey pegged it somewhere about 440 to 500 million. But I would estimate it's higher than that, probably by, again, half as much. So if you tell me, especially post-COVID, when people saw what happened, the unrest and the police just sitting back and saying you're on your own and everything else, if they showed up and said, well, I think for the common good that we should all just turn in our guns, please do it, Mr. and Mrs. America, it would be just mass civil disobedience. And I don't think it would be I don't think it would be shouted. I don't think it would be, loud and vociferous. I think it would just be quiet. I think they just put them in the closet behind the Christmas decorations and close the door quietly. I think that there would be a bunch of people who said no. And, and good for them. And again, creating that Irish democracy. That's what happens there. Anthony said in regards to the whole vampire law, he said, if you have a sign that says open, that counts legally as an invitation in the case of a business. So, that could be an argument. It's an invitation to come in. We're open. But yeah, the vampire law is so stupid. What is the entry fee? Oh, I don't know. I think it's $4 or $5 maybe. I don't know. I don't know what it is. All I know is I'd love to get some free beer. Okay. If I get the free beer, do I have to vote for Nancy's girl? No. How is it free if you have to pay for your admission? All right, smart guy. I guess I should say free beer with your admission ticket. How about that? Historically speaking, the people asking you to give up the arms for the greater good are going to be the same ones herding you out to the killing fields. Yeah, it's for the greater good. Shh. This is for the best. This is for just stand still. Stay still. I listened to a guy from Alberta talk about what to do with their guns. He was a past premier and probably about 80 years old. What did he say, Rick? What did he say? I'm interested to hear what he had to say. I've been catching bits and pieces on this whole Alberta independence thing. And I'm interested to hear more about it. It's not a question of if they're saying now, it's when there'll be a vote for Alberta separation. Interesting. All right. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
What the hell's an assault weapon? What isn't? If I assault you with a penguin, doesn't that make it an assault weapon? Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. One final segment of the show. Normally, this is where we take on all the movies and the entertainment reviews and everything else, but Willie Waffle is feeling under the weather today. He's got a little bit of the food poisoning. This is what happens when you eat at that Chinese food stand down the street by the end of the alley. Just telling you, just don't do that. Just don't do. Oh man, it's crazy stuff. Anyway, we're talking about we've been talking about all these different stories here in the chat room. Would people give up their guns? I think the consensus in the chat room is no, from what I'm seeing so far. I haven't seen anybody that said, anything else. And that actually brought up this discussion about the move for Alberta independence, the secession of Alberta from Canada. If you've been watching that, there's a headline over at CBC that says that there's reform that's now nudging Alberta separation vote from not an if, but now towards a when. That they could secede from Canada. And then Rick said in the chat room that he'd been listening to the past premier, probably 80 years old, talking about from Alberta, talking about what to do with their guns and basically telling them to hide and be quiet. Hide the guns and be quiet. It's the same thing that happened in Australia, right? The same thing that happened in Australia during the big Australia gun confiscation, the buyback, the, whatever. They got some guns. They got hundreds of thousands of guns, but anybody who knows anything knows that they didn't get them all. Especially people who were in rural areas and the outback and stuff like that. They just shrugged and put them in the back of the closet and closed the door. That's all they did. I think that's where things are. I think that's probably what's happening, and what would happen here in the United States if that ever came down to it. Let's talk about this new assault weapons ban, which, by the way, not going anywhere. Okay, not going anywhere. These bans. They're doing it politically, specifically for political purposes, and they're doing it because they're douches. I'm talking about Adam Schiff and Chris Murphy, two of the guys that, if they fell out of their chairs tomorrow, I wouldn't feel bad about laughing about it, right? I mean, these two guys are just horrific, but they keep coming back to it. Now they're going to introduce a new ban on assault weapons. It's a bill to prohibit the purchase and possession of high-powered semi-automatic firearms such as the AR-15, which is not high-powered. That's the thing. I love how the use of these phrases is so, it's high-power. 223 is not a powerful round. Give me an AK-47. Give me an FAL. Give me an AR-10. Give me an AR platform in 308 Blackout. Those are high-powered. An AR-15 is not high-powered. Anyway, they're going to advocate for this bill. They've got gun control groups behind them, of course, including Brady and Giffords and Newtown. They announced it on the press conference on Wednesday. Our old buddy Richard Dick Blumenthal was there from Connecticut. McBath from Georgia, Padilla from California. They're all just out there. Oh man, we got to get. And of course, what was the thing that they talked about? They kept talking about how mass shootings from the U.S. declined by 37% and produced fewer fatalities per event when there was an assault weapons ban in effect from 94 to 04. But those numbers have been riddled full of bullet holes so many times by so many different. The Rand Corporation actually did an analysis on the period of the assault weapons ban and found that there was essentially no change overall when you look at it on the front and the back, before and after. It was a nothing burger. Anyway, but Chris Murphy's out there just, people talking to me in the field, and we're going to keep pressing for an assault weapons ban. Not only is it the right thing to do, it's a popular thing to do. What? Popular with who? Not with me. And quite honestly, I don't care if it's popular or not. You can't have mine. That's what the Second Amendment's about. Just because I said something that's unpopular, are you going to ban all of my speech? They're going to try, but they can't. That's what it's all about. Now, again, this is a nothing burger. It's not going anywhere. It's all political grandstanding. It gives them screen time, which is what they just absolutely desire the most. They want relevance, and they want screen time about all this stuff. But this has got to stop. This has got to stop. And as David Codrea said, we really need to be more precise in our strategic thinking when it comes to the Second Amendment. We really need to start looking at people who are causing part of these problems. And some of those people are Republicans. Even Texas, that bastion of, well, don't mess with Texas, right? I mean, they're pro-gun, except for when they're not. Right? They have a law on the books that bans the carry. There's a law is a ban on carry in locations that derive 51% of their proceeds from alcohol. So it's not just, bars. It could be restaurants. They had a ban on, fairgrounds. They had a ban on all this kind of stuff. There's all kinds of things that where you shouldn't be banned. And the Supreme Court has ruled on this. It's a protected right to bear arms in public. And Texas, has just gone on. Anyway, you're seeing the same thing in Texas here recently. There was a battle when they were trying to run this election here for the Congress, and Tony Gonzalez was a representative. The GOP threw money at him hand over fist. He was in a very red district. Now, this is a guy who's actively working and has worked for gun control. Running against him was YouTube sensation, big-time gun guy, Brandon Herrera. He almost won. Herrera almost won, but had absolutely no help from the Texas Republican Party or the National Party. He almost squeaked it out. But here's the party at the state and the national level supporting a guy who is anti-gun in Texas. Guys, you're not helping. If the GOP had stayed out of it, remained neutral, or given money to Herrera, the pro-gun candidate, but no, they had to protect Gonzalez because he probably stood for one or two things that they believed in, and the gun issue wasn't a big enough thing for them. It's a big issue for me. It's a big issue for a lot of us. We should be watching this kind of stuff. We've got to find these wishy-washy Republicans, especially on things like the Second Amendment. And we need to get them out. We need to get them out. I mean, how do we get away from that? I don't know. All right. Well, I'll see you at the Kenai Sport Rec and Trade Show tonight if you're going out. Otherwise, be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend. Yeah. What isn't high-powered? My little 22. That's what's not high-powered, I guess, As soon as one of these suits can clearly define what high-powered and assault weapons actually means, I'm willing to at least have the conversation. Until then, pound sand. Oh, man. Willie lives in New York. Willie does not live in San Luis Obispo. He lives in New York. It's not a gun. It's a lead vitamin dispenser. I thought the Brune decision already addressed the assault weapons debate, said LD Howard. Yeah, I mean, you'd think. You know what? To do it, and I was gonna make a T-shirt out of it, and I never did because by the time I got around to it, Natasha wasn't. But it was Natasha going the greed. It was a great cartoon. Great cartoon. From Art by Carla. If you don't follow her on Facebook, you should. She has some great stuff. All right. It was a good show, my dad says, even without Willie. That's high praise for my dad. He usually hates everything I do. Just kidding. He'd be like, look, you made I throw a pile of mud on the floor. Oh, it's art. You're my son. It's perfect. Anyways, a good show. Thank you for coming out, guys. It's been good. We will see you tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you Monday, actually. Monday, that's what I meant. Monday. We'll see you. Have a good one.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy
Goodbye.
lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
you.